So we just touched on your leaving to go to Yugoslavia. And so our question, or my question is, what reservations did you have as a young person in heading abroad, and what preparations you made before leaving the U.S. for Yugoslavia?
Well, I think one thing that has to be said is I had an unusual graduate career in that I combined graduate courses in anthropology with graduate courses at the Russian Institute. So it was a path, and I was completely on my own in a way. And I wanted to say that two of the professors who had some influence on me and who had some importance in American academic life and in American intellectual history in the 20th century. Um, there were actually three, but two I wanted to focus on for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Philip Mosley, who was director of the Russian Institute at Columbia in 1950 when I came there as a student.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, he took a break, I think in the late 50s, to work at the Council on Foreign Relations, and then went back to teaching at Columbia. Before the Second World War, he was essentially a, um, a Russian historian, and I think his uh, um, uh, dissertation had something to do with the Turkish Straits and the role of Russia, which and their Black Sea ports and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But the main thing about him was that after he had an initial career doing research in the Soviet Union and came back, and I think before coming to Columbia, he was at Cornell and was writing about Russian history. And there was something that happened that I don't understand, and I really haven't come on the proper archival documents. But he applied for a grant. I think it was the Social Science Research Council or the American Council of Learned Societies, or some combination of the two.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the mid-1930s. And he wanted to continue his studies in Russian history. But they made a decision, and since the records of the Social Science Research Council have been lost, it's hard to reconstruct how and why the decision was made that he get a background as a historian in the social sciences and try to apply that to an understanding of Eastern Europe. And here we're talking about the mid-1930s.
Yeah.
Now, another person who was on my doctoral committee, but not on my dissertation committee, was Margaret Mead, whose courses I took as she offered them at Columbia. Margaret and I were never close. I was one of, many, many students that crossed her path in the 1950s. But she did get to know me fairly well. And in her correspondence at the Library of Congress, there's some letters that I wrote to her in the course of my career in anthropology for various responsibilities that she had. But one of the most fascinating things, which, given the gap then that separated faculty and students, I did not know that there was a long-term relationship between the two. It was a very deep personal relationship. The exact documentation doesn't permit me to go into any details about this relationship, other than it began, I guess, in the late 1920s or early 1930s. And Margaret Mead does discuss this in her introduction to the memorial volume dealing with Mosley and his work, and it brings together people who were a specialist in the Communist Party, and as well as some of Mosley's early articles, which have become classics in the field, about the extended family in the Balkans. Now, I can reach for the book and
I was
just
just